Howdy folks, it's Adriel the Hunting Gear Guy, and this is the GSG 1911-22. It's a 1911 sized 22 handgun, so 22 LR only, and it's kind of interesting. A couple interesting things about it. Because the gun's shape is the same as the 1911, and it actually fits into 1911 holsters, and even the magazines will fit into a 1911 style mag pouch. So very much so, this pistol could be a starter for pistol for someone looking to get into a 1911 eventually, or at the very least, like a really interesting training pistol that runs standard gear out there. You know, a lot of the 22 specific platforms don't really have like a lot of this duty or competition gear, whereas this guy does. So you could shoot this thing in competition fairly easily. So I want to take a closer look at it. Before we do that, let's just make sure that we're empty. Our mag's out. Our chamber's empty, and just in case you're wondering, our magazine's empty too. So, very much looks like a regular 1911. There are a couple of differences here between my gun and a standard GSD 1911. Mine has the upgraded Dawson precision sights, which are really nice. The factory ones are these yellow 3 dots. They got two dots on the back and 1 dot on the front. And I think those are lame. I really like a fiber optic front sight and a blacked rear. So this is the ticket from Dawson Precision. Other than that, I've got a couple of mods in here. One of them to disable the grip safety. I didn't really like it, so it will fire without depressing that grip safety at all. And I'll show you where to do that a little bit later. And there are a bunch of other parts that you can upgrade in these things too. There's actually a couple of companies out there that like that's their jam is building competition 22s off of this platform, which is kind of an interesting idea. Now, disassembly is a little bit different than your standard 1911. You can probably see one of the differences right here. We've got a little Allen key screw there, so why don't we go ahead and undo that guy. Whoop. Now, there's an upgrade kit that you can get that that gives you a better, I think it's a bushing, spring plug, and it's supposed to give you better accuracy. But I don't know, I think with a pistol, it's primarily the operator, so I'm not too worried about it for myself. Then we're just going to back it up to that disassembly slot. That part's just like a 1911. And then we should just be able to, wait, that pin. Yes, that pin. Poke that guy out here. There. Now we can just pull it off the front. There we go. Now, some of this is looking familiar if you've got a 1911 out there. Some of it's a little bit different. Let me go ahead and pull that guy out. Our spring is quite light in this thing because, again, it's just a 22. There's our guide rod with buffer on it. And this whole shebang, whoa, got to get our bushing out. And that guy comes out. Come on. It's a little bit tight with the edge there. And there's our bushing. Now the slide itself, I believe it's made of, if it's not zinc, it's aluminum. It's a very lightweight slide. It needs to be to run 22. Some of the other like purpose-built 22s use a sturdier, shorter slide, but it's because this guy's doing the whole 1911 thing, it's got to use a very lightweight slide. So that's why we're using lightweight materials here. Sorry, I pulled off that one screw without the audio on. So if you want to change out your grip panels, fairly easy too. That's different. Standard 1911, well, those will just be open. Whatever. Now, the key with taking this one out is to have your finger over here and to press that magazine release as you try to loosen it. So just keep wiggling it until you find the spot, and then it'll lock it open. You can take it out. Next, we're going to knock out that pin. I'm just going to hold the bottom here. I doubt it's actually going to give me any trouble. And then we can push out that housing. Now, one thing I got to tell you guys, I can't remember if this is the factory one or not because I've changed this a couple of times. This isn't the factory one. This is actually a just a plastic flat one. The factory one has a little cutout on it with, was it a magazine disconnect? Some BS I didn't want, so I just threw this plastic one in here. The idea with this pistol was to make it for my kid, so adding this little plastic guy in here made it a little bit lighter. That was the thought, anyways. All right, there's a safety detent's coming out. There's a bunch of other stuff. I'm just kind of pushing out here. Let's get that. Hammer pin. Oh yeah, that guy. It's all coming back to me now. It's pushing. It's a little bit magnetic. It keeps pulling it as I push it. Now there you can see there's a lot of the parts on here are basically the same as the 1911. Here's that grip safety that I modified. I just cut the end off there, and then it doesn't need to use a grip safety anymore. There's still also a safety up in here. I think, was it Series 70, Series 80? I can't remember. Whatever. That's the doohickey that's got to act against it that I got to put back in there. That's kind of a pain in the butt compared to a 1911. But I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this guy and come back to you. All right, I finished reassembling my gun. Went to the range, shot a couple rounds. I wanted to talk about a couple of interesting things on this pistol that I reminded myself after I shot it. One, it's just so fun to shoot. Like, there's no recoil to it. You can literally just put it on the target and keep pressing the trigger and keep making hits, and that part's really fun. Two, my kid really likes shooting this gun too because, again, not much recoil. Now, one thing I noticed with him, it is possible to limp wrist this thing, even a 22, because he would get a jam every once in a while. I'm not sure if he had his thumb on the slide or if he was pressing on it with his thumb or if he was just limp wristing it, but he did get some failures. I didn't get any. Like, this thing ran flawlessly for me. I was just running like Federal 36 screen blue box garbage out of it, and it was running fine. But he had a couple stoppages, so I think that might have been limp wristing or pushing against the binding or something like that. But he really likes shooting it. The slide, other than the weight of the hammer, the slide is actually very light and easy for kids to rip on. So he can grab it and pull it back fairly easily. Another couple of thoughts here. The magazines on this thing drop free. So a lot of mags on 22 handguns don't drop free. Some of them have like a heel release and that kind of thing, which is fine if you're just plinking. If you want to shoot in a match, though, you need something that'll go in and out fairly easily, and that's what this magazine does fairly well. The other thing to mention is that these GSG mags are, I mean, they can't be good metal, but they're heavy metal, and they're quite heavy. So they'll fly out of that thing even at a pretty decent angle. Ooh, even that, they'll still come out. So you don't need to be fully up and down for them to fall out, and they're just fine. The magazine release button on it is very light, much lighter than my other 1911s. Maybe I got to work on them, but much nicer. And the trigger is not bad because it's a single stage. You could work on it as well because like all the components are there and they're all pretty standard 1911 components. You could work on this trigger if you wanted to. So all interesting things you could do with this pistol. Now, a couple of other thoughts. This pistol wouldn't be a bad idea for steel challenge. If you had rimfire steel challenge in your area and went to shoot it with a 22 pistol, not a bad idea, especially for something that without a red dot, just with standard iron sights. This is actually a pretty decent little pistol to do it with. The weight's not bad. It points just like a regular 1911. Trigger's excellent. The sights, if you upgrade to the Dawson Precision, are very nice as well. So it's a pretty decent little pistol for that kind of thing. And really, that's, I think, where this GSG 1911-22 has a pretty unique niche, is in getting into competition. There's lots of 22 handguns out there. Some of them arguably better than this, easier to maintain, easier to strip down. I mean, I'm not a super big fan of how the 1911 strips down. There's too many pins and little things and screws and all that kind of thing. But it is a really nice shooting platform, and it is a really nice trigger on the platform, and For a competition gun for right around 300 bucks, this is pretty good. It's a pretty good little competition pistol. Now, keep in mind, you will have to run heavy, sorry, not heavy, high velocity. I was thinking like HV, high heavy? No, high velocity. There we go. Just high velocity standard 22 ammo. CCI mini mags are a nice, really high quality round that you can run in a gun like this, and they're perfectly suited for something like this. But other than that, I mean, some people complain that because this slide, I believe it's aluminum again, might have been oversprayed, so there might be paint in the tracks. You may need to get a bunch of rounds through it before it's nice and smooth and it runs right for you. So that's a possibility. I bought mine used. The guy said he put 400 rounds through it, which is really not all that much, but I've never had that kind of problem in it at all. So all in all, the GSG 1911 is a really fun little pistol. Because it's pretty inexpensive at $350. I would really recommend getting one of these instead of one of the conversion kits that puts a 22 on your regular pistol, because a lot of those are like $500-600, and you don't get a dedicated 22 pistol that's just ready to go and is always tuned in. You don't need to remove or add parts or anything like that. The price is low enough that it's really, in my opinion, worth it just to have one of these as a 22 handgun. Now, in terms of this handgun versus other 22 handguns, I think the unique niche that it serves is that it's a pretty good steel challenge and competition pistol. If you're going to run and gun or do stuff on the clock where you need to drop mags and put mags in, this pistol's pretty good, and it might be better than a lot of the other pistols at the price point. Because it runs on a standard 1911 holster, you can set it up for the game you shoot. So if you're getting a junior shooter into 3-gun or something like that, and your local club allows 22s, you could grab one of these, grab a holster that has active retention on it, and away you go. And if you're shooting IPSC or pistol matches with your boy or your daughter, and you want them to run this gun, again, very easy to find 1911 pistols, holsters, and mag pouches to run this thing with. So it's very convenient for that, for competition use. And I think that's a unique niche, and one of the reasons why I'd recommend the GSG 1911 22. Thanks for watching. That's low recoil. Yeah, come in, honey.